Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, my name is Nurita Rahayu and I am student at UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta. So today I want to make some article summary which I've read and review for one semester or for this whole semester, and there are 10 articles that focus on the listening skill section, which aims to find out the aspects or things that can improve listening skill for English foreign learners. Okay, we go to the next slide. Okay, in this slide, here is a table of contents that include the titles of the articles that we will discuss on this occasion. So, in this table of contents, I have sorted the titles of the article, which can help us as English foreign learners to find out whether the method that used by the authors of this article can really improve our listening skill. So the first article is the flip a classroom model to develop Egyptian EFL students listening comprehension. The second one is using English movies and TV programs for developing listening skills of EFL learners. The third one is the use of movie to enhance undergraduate students' listening comprehension ability. The fourth one is understanding EFL students' use of listening strategies in watching English captioned movies. And the next article is the influence of authentic English video clips on students' listening comprehension. The next article is about YouTube videos on EFL college students' listening comprehension. And the next article is the impact of using TED Talk as a learning instrument on enhancing Indonesian EFL learners' listening skill. The next article is about podcasts. So, podcast impacts on students' listening skill. So, a case study based on students' perception. The next one is implementing podcasts with transcript through reading while listening strategy to improve students' listening comprehension. And the last one is the effect of audiobooks on EFL students' listening comprehension. So we go to the first article and we will discuss about this article. So the first article is the flip classroom model to develop Egyptian EFL students' listening comprehension. So the purpose of this article is to investigating the effect of the flip classroom model on Egyptian EFL students' listening comprehension. So the author of this article wants to prove whether this flipped classroom model can help students' listening comprehension or not. And the research procedure that used in this article is pre-testing and post-testing. So in this flipped classroom, required participants to watch videos before class that explain the contents of each lecture. And in this research, the researcher conclude that the flipped classroom model can improve the listening comprehension of EFL students because watching some videos could have improved the listening comprehension of the participants for three reasons. So the first one is listening to native speakers could have made participants aware of the difficulties of understanding spoken authentic English. So this might have led them to try harder to enhance their listening comprehension skill. The second one is the presence of nonverbal communication features could have been useful for participants in comprehending the listening material. And the last one is the technical features of video might have provided participants with opportunities for analyzing and comprehending the language presented. So, We already know that the flipped classroom model can be used by teacher as a learning model that can improve students' listening skill. And next, I will tell you a way of learning that is more interesting and preferred by students. That is by using films or movies. Okay, we go to the next slide. So the second article is using English movies and TV programs for developing listening skill of EFL learners. So the purpose of this article is to prove whether the use of English movies and TV programs can improve the listening skills of EFL learners. So, in this article, the research participants were divided into three groups according to their long-term viewing habits. And the respondents were asked to complete a short questionnaire in order to acquire data regarding the daily time they would spend in watching movies and TV programs. And all the participants in every group took a standardized listening test so as to find out how many points they scored. And and in this article, the author concludes that the finding of this study do not appear to support the hypothesis that more frequent exposure to watching movies and television shows in English language would result in better listening skills for EFL learners. And one of the factors that support the statement in this article, according to the author, is the relatively low number of participants in this study, which means that the generalizability of the finding is decreasing. Because the author in this article said that one of the factors was due to the low number of participants, so I made a comparison with the next article, which both still use movies as a learning media. So we go to the next slide. And the third article is the use of movie to enhance undergraduate students' listening comprehension ability. So the purpose of this article is to determine whether or not students can comprehend the words spoken by the movie speaker. And in this article, the research procedure would only takes about 4 days due to the third season of movies only having 4 episodes, and therefore the research participants are required to watch the movie at least one episode per day and make the synopsis with it. And moreover, the researchers would conduct the treatment activity tapped to the research participants via WhatsApp's chat group. So, in this research, the researcher conclude that watching movies can improve listening comprehension capability in terms of vocabulary because by using movies, students could comprehend vocabulary effectively since they can see the movie scenes by scenes and infer what the scene's context is about. And then they understand the meaning of the vocabulary that the movie characters are attempting to deliver. And in this article, the author states that the use movies can improve students' listening comprehension capability in terms of vocabulary, which is different from the statement in the previous article. And the next article is still related to the movies, but this time it focuses more on the strategies that used by students. Okay, we go to next slide. So the fourth article is understanding EFL students' use of listening strategies in watching English captioned movies. So the purpose of this article is to exploring the frequency of use of listening strategies in watching English captioned movies in 5 general English classes at Ho Chi Minh City Industry and Trade College. So, in this article, the research used mixed method designs was used to collect and analyze the qualitative and quantitative data with a set of close-ended questionnaire and semi-structured interview. So, in this research, the researcher conclude that the frequency of listening strategies that students use to watch English captioned movie was relatively high. And among the listening strategy mentioned in this study, the most frequently used strategy by students was cognitive, followed by metacognitive and socio-affective. So, in terms of cognitive listening strategy, students tend to guess meaning words in the contents, predict the contents of movies, and write down the main points of the movies. So, with respect to metacognitive listening strategy, students always check their understanding after watching English captioned movies, and set up detailed plans and step for listening periods and raise issues after each listens. So, relating to socio-effective, for listening strategies, students always try to relax and keep focus on the English captioned movies, as well as actively work with classmates and teacher to do listening tasks. So the next article is also like watching some video, but it's about like English video clips. So we go to the next slide. So, this article is the influence of authentic English video clips on students' listening comprehension. So, the purpose of this article is to investigating the effects of using authentic English video clips to improve listening comprehensions among EFL students in Aceh, Indonesia. So, in this research, the experimental design in this article involve like two group of students, that is experimental and control group. So in the experimental group, there was treated by using authentic English video clip, and the control group was taught by using audio compact disc or CD, and the treatment lasted like 2 months, and after the treatment a post test was given to both group, and which consists like 30 items. So in this research, the researcher conclude that using authentic English video clips successfully improved the second grade EFL students listening comprehension at State Senior High School for Banda Aceh as compared to the students who were taught by using authentic English audio teaching materials. And from this research, we know that students could clearly observe the context or situation of conversation, and its undeniable help the students listen to the context of the utterance or speeches without having to guess the context of the conversation. Moreover, this study has contributed to providing a realistic model for improving students' listening achievements among EFL students whose native language is not English. So, the next article is about the another strategy that uses technology that we usually use, or today's young people who often use this technology as entertainment for them, and we can also use this technology to improve our listening skills. So we go to the next slide. So this article is YouTube videos on EFL college students listening comprehension. So the purpose of this article is to compare the learning efficiency of traditional teaching materials and new learning resources or YouTube. Moreover, this paper is also to investigate whether students will have better listening comprehension after teaching in combination with YouTube or not. So, the research design that is used in this paper is a pre-test and post-test to validate the learning efficiency. And then in this research, the researcher conclude that combining computer assisted learning technology or YouTube into the classroom not only helps students become more fluent in English but also activates their motivation. The majority of students thought that YouTube had a big impact on their English learning, and moreover, the use of YouTube in the EFL classroom improved the listening comprehension and retention of EFL college students. So, the next article still uses YouTube as a media but focuses more on TED Talk. So actually TED Talk is a YouTube channel that is very useful, and of course many people know about TED Talk. So we go to the next slide. So this article is the impact of using TED Talk as a learning instrument on enhancing Indonesian EFL learners' listening skill. So the purpose of this article is to examine the impacts of TED Talks as a learning tools and prove whether these ways of learning can really improve the listening skills of learners. And the research design that is used in this paper is a pre-test and post-test to validate the learning efficiency. So the participants in this article were divided into two groups, that is experimental group and control group. So the experimental group received the treatment by using 13 videos of TED Talks, and the control group participants were taught through the DVDs and the CDs of their course textbook for like 13 seasons. And then they also have a t-test to see whether there was a statistically significant difference in listening comprehension test score between the two of group. And then, in this research, the researcher conclude that the use of TED Talk assisted Indonesian EFL learners in improving their listening skill. The author also concludes that incorporating TED Talk videos into the Indonesian EFL context can generate beneficial results for EFL learners, and TED Talk was attractive for the learners and could inspire them to study their English lessons more enthusiastically. Moreover, the easy access to TED Talk video and their exciting content can be the significant features of TED Talk that can help EFL students improve their English language learning. And then the next article is about podcasts. So actually podcasts are often like we can find the podcast on YouTube, and there are even several channels load specifically for podcasts. So we go to the next slide to discuss about podcasts. So this article is podcast impacts on students' listening skill, a case study based on students' perception. So the purpose of this article is to exploring podcast effects on listening skill for university students. And besides that, the author also wanted to know the problem that the students encountered in using podcasts, and also how the students' listening skills were influenced by podcasts. So in this study, like in this article, use like a case study design. So it was include like a questionnaire and an interview where the instrument used in this study to collect a data. And in this research, the researcher concluded that students agree that podcasts could help them learn English, and that they were willing to use podcasts as a media to improve their listening skill. And they are like podcasts very much, and they had a positive attitude toward using them because the podcast motivate them. And then beside that, most of the students also agree that podcasts were easy to get since there are many podcasting websites available on the internet. And its findings that this present study has led the author to conclude that podcast has huge potential to help learners improve their listening skill. So after knowing the impact of podcasts to improve our listening skills. So the next article is still related to the podcast, but the next article is like using a transcript when they are using a podcast. So we go to the next slide to discuss about this article. So this article is implementing podcasts with transcript through reading while listening strategy to improve students' listening comprehension. So the purpose of this article is to investigate the implementation of reading while listening strategy by using podcasts with transcript as a media in improving EFL students' listening comprehension. And the research design that is used in this paper is Classroom Action Research or CAR. And in its implementation, the researchers was assigned to be the lecturer in the class to deliver the material as well as implement the proposed strategy. And the researcher focused on students' improvement in their listening comprehension, and several instruments were used such as interview guide, observation checklist, observation file, or observation file notes, listening tests, and questionnaire. And then, in this research, the researcher concluded that implementing podcasts with transcript through whole reading while listening strategy can significantly improve the listening comprehension of EFL students. And because the students are able to identify the topic of the text, identify the keyword, recognize vocabulary, guessing meaning from context, and use real-life knowledge with the support of a written script from podcast transcription. And then we go to the last article, and it's about audiobooks. So we go to the next slide. And then the last article is the effects of audiobooks on EFL students' listening comprehension. So the purpose of this article is to determine the effects of audiobooks on listening comprehension and to determine students' views about using audiobooks in regular classroom settings. And the research that used in this article is a pre-post-test control group research design using a quantitative and qualitative research method. The experimental design involved like two groups of students, that is, experimental and control group. So the control group have a treatment that lasts for 13 weeks and must listen to and read the books simultaneously. And then a t-test was carried out to see whether there was a statistically significant difference in listening comprehension test score between the two of group. And then, in this research, the researcher concluded that the use of audiobook significantly increased the listening comprehension skill of the participant. And the participant also indicate that the audiobook motivates them to read and listen to more books. And almost all of the students expressed positive ideas about audiobooks, and however, there were two students who didn't enjoy audiobooks. Okay, we go to the next slide. Okay, the last slide is thank you. So I would like to say to thank you to all of you who watched my video. I hope you guys can get the knowledge about how to improve our listening skill based on this article. And yeah, thank you so much for your attention. See you in another video. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.